I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. I don't see why the Roosters need Daly Cherry-Evans. Nothing against Daly Cherry-Evans. You know what I think of him. He's an astonishing player and he's still in great form. But Sandon Smith and Sam Walker are surely their long-term combination.
Hello, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus. After a drama-charged, action-packed week in the great game that is rugby league, expansion to the West has been confirmed. The sin bin is chockers and Origin footy is back. We are presented each week by our friends at the Tab. And it's a great pleasure to welcome the man that puts the magic into Magic Round. Phil Gould, how are you?
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
Going well. Looking forward to a big weekend?
Yeah, it will be a big weekend. We're up there Monday night for 100% footy. We did a live 100% footy under the Story Bridge there in Brisbane, and plenty of excitement about Magic Round coming up. We've got the Women's Origin Thursday night to kick it all off, and then a full round of rugby league at Suncorp Stadium. Hope the surface holds up.
Yeah.
She was a bit sloppy the other night.
It's been ordinary for a few weeks, in fact. I spoke with our designated turf-laying expert, Brad Fittler, about this on Sunday, actually, at Leichhardt, and he explained that the technology is so good now that they can just bring in the new rolls of turf and they have machines that basically just compress it straight into the surface and it's ready to go straight away.
Yeah.
So he's fairly confident that it will be more stable than the surface at present.
Not sure his turf expertise
You don't think he's qualified?
transfers north of the border. No.
Right.
I think he's fairly isolated in his turf expertise.
Yeah. You worried about it, are you?
I think all the teams are worried about it, yeah. So we'll just have to see what happens. It's the same every year.
So a whole week of footy in Queensland, and I was thinking driving in to talk to you today, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. There's probably been a number of standouts in terms of public enemy number one for the Queensland Rugby League audience, going back through the decades. I'm sort of thinking back to the start of Origin in particular. So Tommy was number one, right? Because they gave it to him in the morning, he walked the streets before the first game.
Yep.
And I'd imagine Steve Mortimer as the first winning captain probably wasn't all that popular.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you're next.
No.
Oh, come on.
No.
Yes.
No. I'm not a player. I'm not a player.
No, you didn't need to be. You were public enemy number one. For sure.
No chance.
For sure.
No chance. No chance. They hate players before they hate.
Oh, you stirred them up brilliantly. Did you have any run-ins with the Queensland fans when you were coaching the Blues?
Funny people, Queenslanders. Funny people, Queenslanders.
Do you reckon Freddie was public enemy number one at one stage?
I don't know about that.
He's too likeable.
I think the Queenslanders really respect the football and they respect the competition, and I think it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. But the rivalry of Origin is very, very real. I mean, we can even feel it, in the commentary team. All the ex-Origin people we've got there from New South Wales and Queensland, on the night, you can actually feel it.
Oh, yeah.
It gets very, very standoffish. Yeah, they don't give too much away.
That's the best part of it from a commentator's point of view, is that it's the one game, or the three games, it's the one time of the year where you actually are allowed to be partisan. You can cheer for your state.
Yeah.
And it's encouraged amongst our commentators.
Well, they didn't like it when I did it, but
Didn't they?
No.
Why?
I used to get a lot of complaints.
What for?
And I was in
But Fatty used to hoot Nola.
Oh, yeah, he could do it. Wally could do it. I couldn't
Why
do it.
couldn't you do it?
I couldn't do it, no.
Because you're public enemy number one.
Got a lot of complaints.
Would you concede Gal was public enemy number one?
He should have been. He should have been. Well, he cultivated it. He wanted to be public enemy number one.
Two heads.
Oh.
That didn't go down all that well.
That was Fatty's great line.
Yeah, the dead Ipswich. Can you recall that? Oh, that's a great story. If you ever heard the story, if you haven't heard it before.
he just called them two-head city or something. Anyway, I don't know the whole story, but at some stage he had to get on the phone and apologise to the mayor or something or other, and he's trying to talk to him, and the mayor's giving him the rounds of the kitchen.
I think it was a she.
Yeah, and halfway through the conversation, he said, "Which head am I talking to here?" He said, "You're not making any sense."
Oh, it's just the best. There are some people that can get away with anything.
He's a Queenslander. He's a Queenslander.
I know. He can just get away with anything, Fatty.
Yeah.
Women's Origin. I just had a look at these teams last night. Two great teams. contrasting in that the Queensland spine is just elite. Upton, Aitken, Brigginshaw and Brown, like the first three are probably the three best players in the women's game, you'd have to say.
They have been for some time.
And then countering that, the Blues have got an outstanding forward pack. So our Millie Elliott isn't playing this year. She's obviously expecting a child. But Samaima Taufa's back. She missed the series last year. Ellie Johnston, Kezi Apps, Yasmin Clydesdale, Olivia Koenig with Keely Davis at hooker. That's an outstanding pack of forwards.
Yep. These girls have all been in camp for some time. I think both states have had a big preparation for this because they haven't played any football up to this point. Well, certainly the New South Wales girls are relying on their camp to give them it. The girls now they've got their real identities, haven't they? They've got their really special identities. Like New South Wales, Abby Church at fullback, Jamie Chapman, Jessica Surgis, Isabel Kelly, crikey.
Good. The centres are pretty good, eh?
Tiana Penatani. Yep.
So Penatani played in the wing last year. It comes into play 5/8, and Jessie Southwell gets her first chance.
Yep. I think it'd be good having Penatani closer to the action. She's a dangerous ball runner. Yeah, it'd be a very, very interesting clash, that one, on Thursday night, and well worth watching.
Yes, I'm sure it'll attract a massive audience, and I'm sure there's going to be a huge crowd there at Suncorp. Brings me to question number one. The Women's Origin will produce a record-breaking crowd, and I'll add another dimension, a record-breaking television audience tomorrow night.
Yes! Well, it should, absolutely. We're coming into the start of Magic Round, and a great way to kick it off, they're going to play the Women's Origin on the Thursday night, and the three-game Origin series last year was spectacular. New South Wales won the first game, Queensland clawed it from the jaws of defeat in game 2 and then were too good in game 3.
Incredible.
Great series.
Incredible. Series. They should have lost in game 2. Lauren Brown with the field goal in the wet.
New South Wales were the better side all night, but you just got the feeling. You thought, well, it can't replicate in the girls' game what the men keep doing to us, but it did. They were just never in the game, Queensland, but hung in. I think they were down 10-0. Hung in and then found a way to kick a field goal to win the game in the dying moments and levelled the series. And then they went up to play Townsville in game 3. I think we're up in Townsville. And they thought, well, a dry surface, that'll make a difference. New South Wales will be good. Of course, an hour before the game, Queensland ordered the rain. It poured raining all game and Queensland were too good again. See what the weather brings on Thursday night.
Queensland, beautiful one day, Origin the next. You're the new ambassador for Forex.
No. I'm a non-drinker, Matthew. I'm not an ambassador for anyone. Very nice of the boys to bring me in a gift. I think it was a bit of a promotional act on 100% footy. But as soon as I put the bag down, some Queenslander come and stole it.
Oh, did it have beers in it?
No.
Oh.
No. They had some barbecue utensils and some hats and a pair of socks and a cooler thing for your can of drink.
I think you gave it away. I don't think someone stole it.
No, they gave it away. They come and stole it. I put it down the side and someone come and stole it.
I enjoyed listening to Tom. I've heard Pat Carrigan talk a lot. I haven't heard a lot of Tom Gilbert. It was a great interview. A couple of things he kept repeating, actually, that stood out to me. He talked, with respect to Izzy Katoa, he talked about his humility and he kept talking about his ability to take criticism.
Yeah.
And in a game that is sort of plagued by cliches a lot, I haven't heard that a lot.
Yeah.
You know, the player's ability to take criticism. And he repeated it a few times. So I'm thinking they're fundamentals of the culture there at the Dolphins.
You've got to create an atmosphere that is where everyone feels safe. If you're in meeting rooms or you're in review sessions and all that sort of thing, you've got to have an area where everyone feels safe and where the relationships are strong enough that we can be really honest with each other, because that's honesty in self-appraisal and honesty in critiquing performances is really important for the education part of it. And we don't want anyone putting themselves above the team. It's for the best interest of the team. And so, you know, a safe environment where everyone's opinion is respected and where you can be honest with each other, even if it means, you know, you're being criticised or something you've done wrong, you've got to, as pointed out, it's not criticism, it's assistance. It's in trying to get a better result for you and the team. And it's obviously a big part of what's going on up there, because I remember him saying that several times. And Izzy would have come through the same system out of Panthers in the junior academy out there when he was coming through. So it's important that players are able to accept advice, to accept correction or criticism, or be pulled into line when they're not doing the right thing. And players, I think, expect to do that. And that he's a very, very talented young man, very, very mature young man for his age. And, Tommy Gilbert gave him a huge rap, which I would have expected because he's certainly a player of the future, that boy.
I can see why Tom Gilbert's leadership is valued, the way he speaks.
Yeah, he's had a tough time himself, but he's... both boys presented really well. Paddy Carrigan, he's a big, strong boy, big, strong lad.
Smart.
Yep.
Smart lad too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's potentially like I don't know, is it a trap for a coach or for a sporting environment when you're sitting down and you're reviewing games? Like that could get a bit delicate at times if someone's had a shocker or...
Oh, yeah, back in the old days it did. Yeah.
They weren't so subtle about things back then?
No. I was showing Mark Guy the error of his ways one time. Could have got very nasty.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very funny. Des Hasler will become the latest Titans coaching casualty this year.
No. No, I don't think so. Yeah.
I don't think changing the coach is going to fix what's going on up there, is it?
No, and we've spoken a number of times about how much talent they got, and they've got immense talent, and they're just probably sorting through a few little issues. They've had some injuries and some changes to the combinations. There are patches in games where they look brilliant, and then other patches where they probably let themselves down a little bit. But Desi's experienced; he'll get to the bottom of it all, and they're. I like watching them play. I think they're an exciting team to watch, but I can see where sometimes they disappoint themselves. So they've got to get that sorted.
They seem to make the same mistakes every week, though.
Yeah, well, opposition teams apply plenty of pressure to where they perceive that they've got some issues, and they probably get shown up a little bit at different times. But there are other times there where, they led the Raiders 16-0 the other day. Like 16-0, and we're just in cruise control. They just had the game by the throat. Canberra didn't look like doing anything. And then 20 minutes later was 16-all, and Canberra were on their way. And Canberra's franked the form by coming out. Well, Canberra's won 6 games this year. They're going particularly well. But so the Titans have got it in them. They really have got it in them. They're a dangerous team. I don't think anyone feels comfortable going to play against them.
Jamal Fogarty, perfect replacement for DCE. So 3 years, around $2 million.
Yeah, well, it's a reward for perseverance because it's not as though Jamal Fogarty has been a teenage star or even a star in the early part of his career. He's just persevered to eventually be picked up by the Canberra Raiders from the Gold Coast Titans, and that was kind of a signing that didn't create any great headlines, and he's gone down there and worked very hard with the Raiders, and he's ended up being a halfback there that survived the test of time under Ricky Stewart. Now he gets into the latter stages of his career, and he's probably made a choice on family and contract value, and Canberra Raiders have looked at their salary cap and been unable to match that offer, and off he goes to the Manly Sea Eagles, who of course are losing their long-term halfback player in Daly Cherry-Evans. He'll certainly give them great service. I still think even at this stage of his career, it doesn't look like he's slowing down. What is he, 31 now? Jamal Fogarty.
He is 31, yes.
Yeah, he's quite the tradesman. He's a goal kicker. He's a good general play kicker. He's got a thumping boot on him. And
steady head.
Yeah, he really is. He's a steady. I think he'll combine well with Tom Trebojevic. Tom Trebojevic is the key to that team, as we saw again on the weekend. But I think it's a good buy. It's mind you, if you're looking for a halfback, there aren't many options around, are there? So they've picked up a tradesman-like, experienced halfback with great kicking game, and to be honest, probably the best available on the market at the moment.
Yeah. So it sort of brings us to the Cherry-Evans situation, and it's been one of the stories of the year alongside Lachlan Galvin. But it's widely reported that Sandon Smith at the Roosters is anticipating Cherry-Evans is going to be there next year. So headlines today, well, not headlines, but media talk, that perhaps Sandon Smith could be a target for Canberra. The way he played on Anzac Day and the way he's developed in the absence of Sam Walker, I find it would be curious for him to not be part of the Roosters halves going forward. He's been playing sensational.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of rumours and a lot of interest in Daly Cherry-Evans from the Roosters. I can't understand that. They've got Sam Walker to come back, and they've got this young fella, Sandon Smith, who I really rate. I've rated for a long time, and he's a great kid and getting better. His performance on Anzac Day was extraordinary. And still got Sam Walker to come back yet. And if they intended on playing Daly Cherry-Evans and Sam Walker in the same team, one of them is going to have to change their role. One of them is going to have to play 5'8" and play left. You know, it's not going to be Daly Cherry-Evans. He's not going to the Roosters to do that at the back end of his career, which means I think it inhibits Sam Walker's development as a game-managing halfback for a couple of years while he hands the reins over to Daly Cherry-Evans. You know, they might be able to say, well, Daly can teach him the ropes and, you know, he can, you know, watch what Daly does. But, you know, I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. I don't see why the Roosters need Daly Cherry-Evans. Nothing against Daly Cherry-Evans. You know what I think of him. He's an astonishing player and he's still in great form. But Sandon Smith and Sam Walker are surely their long-term combination. And the sooner they get playing together, the better. That's just my take on it.
Well, the way he's been going.
Yeah.
And a young, emerging team.
And young Hugo improves by the week.
Yeah.
He's always a handy backstop for both of them. And they've got some brilliant young halves coming through, Rodwells and young fellas in the lower grades that I think have got great potential. So I think they're well served in that area. Now, they're a club that always like bright, shiny things. They love their shiny toys and they love having the best around. And I guess when Daly Cherry-Evans comes on the market, it's more about no one else having them. They don't want anyone else to have them, so I'll have them themselves. That's just the mentality there.
They're the spoilers, spoiling it for everyone else.
Well, yeah, if everyone was after a bright, shiny toy, they're going to get him. That's just that's just the attitude. But I don't see it. I don't see why they need him. I really don't. I don't know that's... anyway, but they obviously think differently.
Do you think he's going to go there? It seems inevitable, doesn't it?
I don't know.
From what we understand.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know whether Daly, told Manly that if he had somewhere in mind or he had a preferred choice or where it was going to be. But as I look through the competition, I'm trying to work out, just exactly where he would best fit. Would the Raiders look at him now that they've lost Fogarty?
Daly? Yeah. Do you reckon he moved to Canberra?
Probably not.
I love Canberra.
Probably not.
It's very cold.
There's nothing against Canberra, but he comes from the Northern Beaches and he comes from Queensland.
But the flow-on effects for the Roosters, like you've talked about Sandon Smith, it would push him probably into the number 14 role where he started in a really strong Roosters team a few years ago. And then what happens to Savala?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, you're going to bring in someone over the top of them. It's going to affect other people and their development. But, it's professional football. It's about winning games and Roosters don't like to take a backward step where some clubs, would take a couple of years to rebuild or reshape their roster and build it up over a period of time. Roosters kind of like to keep it going all the way along. They don't like to have an off-season. So perhaps they think their best chance of winning games for their fans and their sponsors and is to bring in Daly Cherry-Evans, who's a proven game winner. But, it's going to be a hard call on the other boys.
Do you think Daly Cherry-Evans could have his arm twisted to go and spend a year or two in Perth?
Yeah, I suppose he could. Yeah, but that wouldn't be till 27.
Maybe 38.
Yeah, no. I don't.
So the Bears are back, it would seem, for the 2027 season. It hasn't been officially green-lighted by the NRL by way of a statement or anything, but it would appear that the deal has pretty much been done and Brad Arthur's going to coach the club. And I saw Billy Moore at the weekend coming out with his hit list of players. At the top of it, Payne Haas and Jerome Hughes. They'd be a couple of handy acquisitions.
Yeah, start at the top and work backwards. That's the way to do it. Yeah, I think when they get into the reality of what it's going to cost and what it's going to cost to relocate, particularly top-class players that are well-established with their club, it'll take a fairly strategic recruitment effort for them to put a competitive team on the field in year one, and one that's going to sustain them through a period where they need to develop as well. I don't know much about the local rugby league scene across there, and I'm quite sure clubs here will be tightening up their rosters to make sure that everything that they need is in place before the history shows that every time a new club is added to the league, the prices go up a little bit, and clubs assign longer contracts earlier in players' careers just to shore up the talent. It's very competitive now, very competitive out there, particularly for young players. But players coming off contract, it's not. It's really a seller's market at the moment.
Well, thinking back to your auction house from earlier in the year, I think you had Payne Haas at a $1.5 million price tag. That would be good buying for him for an expansion club, wouldn't it? Just
Payne Haas?
To build your club around someone like him?
I don't think you'll get Payne Haas for $1.5 million to Perth, no.
You think that'll be unders?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah. He'd be practically on that at Brisbane. But why would he move? Why would he move?
What's he going to cost? $2 million?
Payne Haas?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. There would be a price big enough. I don't know that Payne Haas would be interested in going to Perth. I might be wrong. I don't know Payne Haas. I've never met him. I don't know. But it'd have to be a big deal to move him out of the Brisbane Broncos to go and play with a new franchise in Perth, particularly at this stage of life. I just don't see that happening, to be honest.
But he's about to come on the market. I'd imagine there'd be big money offers from a whole range of clubs for him.
Well, yeah, there will be, but not everyone's got that sort of money for a front row forward, and not everyone would rank front row forward as that sort of expenditure in your top 30 budget, and that's just that's the reality of it. I mean, he's an exceptional player, brilliant player, but I can't see a dollar value big enough to entice him out of the Broncos. Certainly not across to Perth.
Would they be then, if you're in a new franchise looking to establish your playing roster, would you be thinking halfback? Would that be, you'd be looking for a marquee halfback at first, or are you you're not so much worried about the position and more so the character of the players?
Yeah, I look, there are a lot of things to consider. If you're going to start up a startup is completely different than a renovation, isn't it? Like a rebuild takes time because you've got to remove players from your roster and move players out of your salary cap and then bring players in of good value and good character into your roster. It takes a long time. From a startup, I mean, the Dolphins showed that they can be very competitive very, very quickly if they've got the right people involved. You've got Wayne Bennett, and he employed recruitment manager Peter O'Sullivan, who's extremely well connected, and they did extremely well in the first 2 years of their existence in the NRL to be extremely competitive, and they still are today. And now they're starting to see some young fellas come through as well. But I don't think it's going to be easy for Perth in any way, shape, or form, particularly in the market that we've got at the moment, and in the shortage of players in key positions that the league experiences at the moment. I think they're going to have to do a lot of research and get very, very capable, experienced people who are very experienced in what's coming through the pathway systems in every club across here. I think you look at the top clubs and look at young players whose pathway might be blocked by senior talent that's going very well, where they won't get their opportunity. And that's how an Izzy Katoa ends up at the Dolphins. No one had heard of Izzy Katoa when he signed with the Dolphins, but he had a guy called Nathan Cleary in front of him as a potential halfback for the Panthers. So it's probably an easy sell to someone like him. So, there might be young forwards at the Broncos, with Paddy Carrigan and Payne Haas and these fellas in front of them. There might be some Willison and those sort of fellas. There might be some young forwards in the ranks there, at 19, 20 years of age that by the time we get to 2027, 2028, are very much NRL competitive. If you look at the top sides and look at what's coming through their systems, what's emerging as first-grade players, where at the moment they might be on minimum wage with their current club, and you've got young players that are emerging into the top grade and starting to build their career and then come into the top grade for the first time, and then they get into the top 30 full-time training for the first time, on a minimum wage of 140,000 and their medical and what have you. Now, if you can see real potential in them, and remember it's still 2 years away before you start, and you're offering them 350,000, which is still below the average wage of an NRL player, that's more than their current club can probably afford to keep them in the system, and it's probably a little bit too much to refuse elsewhere. I think that's when you're building a club. You've got to find those young players that are really good value with the good clubs that are probably not, may have their pathway blocked or their opportunities blocked to getting through to the NRL a little bit quicker. And kids can be impatient; they want to get to the NRL quicker, and you need to look for some of those. So there could be young halves or young front rowers or young, in every position really, where in that position, in that particular roster, their pathway could be blocked for several years to get through and get that NRL experience. And they're the sort of kids that will take an opportunity to go to a new startup franchise like Perth. And so you're going to need experienced people with their finger on the pulse here of what's emerging through the lower grades here. And there are some great kids around, like terrific kids around. And then you've got to offer them something too big to refuse, which is still less than the average wage for an NRL player that's established. And then you'll have those sort of journeyman players that are always playing on or out that wage. They give you good service. They're not the number one player in your club or in that position in a particular club. They give the roster really good depth, but they're really good servants. Ray Stone is an example. It's one the Dolphins picked up early on.
Mark Nichols
and those sort of players, who are really professional, tradesmen-like NRL players. They're not the stars of the team, but you need players like that in your roster every week. Well, you'll find those in other clubs that are on, average or below average wages that, you can pay them a little bit more and get them into your roster and give your team immediate leadership and immediate culture, immediate work ethic and those sort of things as well. So,
the three big signings for the Dolphins were the two Bromwich boys and Felice Kafusi, all came from Melbourne and all at the back end of their career, but understand the professionalism associated with the game.
No, it probably suited Melbourne to move them. There might be some senior players with different clubs at the moment who are approaching retirement, who their own clubs are thinking, well, we'll get you around to go around again, but you're going to have to take a pay cut. But they might get the same money if they go to Perth for a couple of years and perform over there. So, you're looking for a mixture of everything. You want to get out in particular and start looking at the best of youth that's around, the best of youth that's close to emerging or should emerge over the next 18 months and have a look at where they are in their rosters, what they're being paid. Some of them aren't even in top 30 lists at the moment. They're on development contracts, so they might be on New South Wales Cup contracts. So you've got to get around and pick around the value there. You've then got to go to the other end and pick some experienced players that have sort of been through it before. And then you kind of look at the journeymen that are going to be really good value, that know the system, they train hard, they play hard, they set a good culture for your club, and that helps the younger players come through. But, I'm big on development, I'm big on youth, I'm big on giving young people opportunities, and I think that's where they're going to need to rely on people with great expertise in that area to make sure that whatever happens in the first couple of years, there's then a future after that. It's just not about putting a team on the paddock for year one. This is a long race. It's a long road, and you can be mildly competitive in year one or year two, but if you go out signing like three players that are 32, 33 years of age, well, in a couple of years they're looking at retirement. What have you got coming through underneath them? And if you haven't performed well in the first couple of years, are you going to be attractive to players to come into that environment again? So, there's a fair bit of roster management to go into it rather than just saying, well, we'll go out and buy Payne Haas and we'll go out and buy Jerome Hughes. Now, maybe they do. Maybe they go out and buy Payne Haas and Jerome Hughes, and maybe that's an attraction for other players, but I think that'll cost a hell of a lot of money to do it. It would be great advertisement for the club, but whether those players at that stage of their career want to go across the other side of the country, I can't answer you. I don't know.
So all the big names that are being thrown around, which is great fodder. People love reading about the prospect of these big names going to new franchise.
It's medium.
Sure, of course
it's
it is.
Medium.
But you're saying the reality is that it's going to be more like a very young team, bookended by some experienced players. And I'm just thinking about the marquee thing. You think back to the start of the Dolphins, they couldn't land one.
No.
They nearly had Munster, they nearly had Brandon Smith, both pulled out. In the end, the Hammer was probably their marquee man.
Which I think were the wrong ones to target. And that's what I mean. I don't know that the Haslers and the Jerome Hughes are the ones to target now. That's my that's my personal opinion. But I think you need to understand what it takes to win football games and understand what it takes to be competitive. And you can do that with players that have got good experience. They're good hard workers. They're probably a little bit underrated in the clubs they are. They're probably a little bit underrated in the game itself. There's plenty of value out there in players, that can come in and when given the opportunity. And you've got to look at the stage of their career in, there are diamonds in the rough out there that you can find that can come in and give you great service. And if you can get players that are performing better than their salary, then you've got good value in your salary cap. But if you suddenly go out and pay what you had to pay for Jerome Hughes and Payne Haas, let's say it cost, honestly, it's going to take a couple of million each to get them to, at this stage of their career, go and play for a franchise like that, all right? And whether it's a Tom Trbojevic or whatever it is, if you want to go and buy a purely marquee player like that to go and relocate to Perth, it's probably going to cost you a couple of $1 million. You put two of them in and that's $4 million. Now you've got $8 million to fill your next 28 spots. So, and if one or two of them were injured at any time during that period or two, I don't know that that's the way to go.
Should Perth get some kind of salary cap dispensation for a marquee player?
Well, that was argued for years and years and years, about regional clubs and other clubs about getting salary cap dispensation. I don't think the other clubs would accept that. I think it's just a level playing field. There has to be other attractions for Perth to bring them in. It's as simple as that. And I'm sure that there are plenty of lifestyle benefits and plenty of investment benefits that could come from being on that side of the country and being. It's a great city, Perth. We've been there a number of times.
Great beaches.
Yeah, beautiful city. But there's a lot of travel. Every second week, it's a lot of travel across the country. It'll be the most travel of any team in the competition, and not just getting to Sydney, but getting to New Zealand or getting to Townsville or those sort of places as well. So,
Townsville, New Zealand to Townsville, it's flying halfway across the world.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they'll have to charter flights, I'd imagine. They don't want to bunny hop their way across there. Yeah, that's a big challenge. But, to simply say, well, let's go out and buy a couple of marquee players and that'll bring the rest of the world with them. No, I don't know about that. I think the solution is to find the value. You might pick up one really good young marquee player, I don't know, but the market's very tough out there. It's really competitive. And it's a seller's market. They can virtually ask their own price at the moment and play on the emotion of the clubs that are desperate to fill a spot or desperate to get success. Or look at our competition table. I mean, it's so up and down. There's just there are a lot of teams that could go either way any different week. It's really unsettled at the moment. The football's good, but it's very, very competitive out there. It's hard to pick a winner.
Things have gone from bad to worse for the last placed Penrith Panthers. I can't believe I'm saying that. The last placed Penrith Panthers. Scott Sorensen went to the Judiciary last evening. He was unsuccessful in having his charge downgraded. So instead of 2 weeks, he's now got 3. 3 weeks. I'm just having a look at one of the online articles here. We're less than a third of the way through the season. There's been $105,000 worth of fines handed out and 54 games worth of suspensions.
Do you think it's working?
Well, you're more equipped to answer that than me.
Yeah, well, I'm not allowed to answer it. But
the one thing I do find curious, and you may or may not have a thought on this, why is the sin bin the answer to this?
It's not.
If we're suspending people for such a long period of time as we've just outlined, and there's such a fine line between what's a high tackle and what not's a high tackle. What isn't a high tackle? It's very early in the morning, haven't had enough coffee. But a sin bin is such a profoundly altering factor in the outcome of a game. Yeah, it hasn't changed anything.
They're coming at it all from completely the wrong direction, and now this has been going on for years and years and years and years and years. This is not a new thing.
Yeah, but there was 18 blokes sin bin on the weekend.
Yeah,
18,
and that's not going to solve anything.
Well, that's my point. Why are they thinking a sin bin is the answer to try and solve this matter?
I can't answer you.
Okay.
Is the simple answer. I can't answer you. If I had 3 hours, I'd go through the history of the tackle technique. I'd go through the history of our game, the history of the rules. We've created this situation for ourselves. I think the players and the coaches do an absolutely outstanding job. An outstanding job under the system that they're being asked to play and the way they're being scrutinised. I think the players and the coaches do an outstanding job. But we've created this for ourselves, and we haven't got the solution to it in the way they're doing it.
I suppose my question comes on the back of what Andrew had to say at the weekend, and he was obviously very passionate about it. But I was thinking, like, who thought? Why would sin binning someone for a often innocuous thing within a game be the answer to try and get people to tackle lower?
Yeah, you're not going to get me to talk about it. I'm sick of talking about it.
Okay,
I really am.
Sure,
and that doesn't mean I'm not.
Well,
annoyed.
I think everyone's sick of talking about it. To be truthful,
well, people within the game are very angry about it. But we get no say, and we can't have a say about it. It's as simple as that.
Speaking of Andrew Johns, Ask Gus, which is presented thanks to our very good friends at the Tab. The NRL season's here, and for the best time in sport, Tab has the best app in sport.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
The Warrnambool Jumps Carnival's on at the weekend. I might have to have a look at my Tab app later today. Rye Atkinson asks, how much money would a prime Andrew Johns get on the open market today?
As much as he wanted. As much as he wanted. We went through the process of our little experiment earlier in the year. If every player was off contract and we had an auction for them and put every player up one by one, they would bring extraordinary amounts of money. Andrew Johns was probably the number one playmaker in history, the number one halfback in history. If not, he's very, very close too. He's certainly in the top couple. But and in today's world, a player that could come in and win your games like that, point scorer like that, points creator like that, who made the players around him better the way he did, be worth a fortune, be worth whatever he wanted. Whatever he wanted. Wherever he wanted to play, wherever he wanted to go, he'd get the top dollar of any player in the game.
I admire many things about Andrew Johns, but one of the things I admire the most is that he stayed at Newcastle for his whole career.
Yeah.
And could have made a lot more money elsewhere.
Yeah, probably could have.
Could have gone to rugby.
Could have. I don't think he ever would have, but he could have. No, Newcastle. Look, he's just a Newcastle boy. That's what he is. He's made a very great career for himself in the media post-career, which is, it's a reward for what he's done as a player. But as a player back then, crikey, and he also came through an era where there were a lot of really good halfbacks. It was very, very competitive around that time as well. The depth of talent in that position in our competition, we've seen a lot of our senior players are still the best players in the game, and there's only a handful of younger players coming through looking like they're going to reach those levels. And it's because the game is so hard to play. Our game is really difficult to play. The rules make it very, very hard to play. I don't want to keep going over this because I'm not allowed to talk about it, but we make it very, very hard for ourselves, and it's hard.
Who's not letting you talk about it?
You know who's not letting me talk about it. But there'll come a day, I guess.
Can't wait for this book. It's going to be good. Oh, the lawyers will be scouring over that one. Hey, Joe Kahn wants to know when Sam Hughes is back.
Hopeful round 12. Now, Sam Hughes was an interesting one. Sam Hughes rolled his ankle a little bit in the second trial of the year against the Broncos. That's Sam Hughes who plays for the Bulldogs back in February. And he was considered a chance of playing round 1. In fact, trained in the week leading up to round 1 and was ruled out at training because he was still hobbling a little bit, figuring that another week would be fine to be round 2. But when they went and x-rayed it again, it was kind of, we don't know what he's done to it, but he ended up with, he needed surgery to a syndesmosis injury. And he's had a couple of setbacks during the recovery for that, which is not uncommon. So where they thought he'd be 1 or 2 weeks, he's now going to be look like round 12, and that's with a couple of buys in it. So it's sort of like been 14 weeks to get him back near to playing. He's not ready to play at the moment. He would be very handy at the moment, given that there are half a dozen middles missing for the Bulldogs this week. So, but certainly round 12.
Okay. There you have it. Hope that answers your question, Joe. Archie B wants to know what your favourite coaching moment was.
Favourite coaching moment?
Mm.
It would be unfair to pick one above all others. Favourite coaching moment? There were plenty of them. The ones that people stand up was probably 88 grand final, 91 grand finals, some Origin successes. The last game I ever coached, which was 2004, was an Origin decider success in Sydney. They were great moments, but a lot of other moments in between. Just in probably obscure games and players and seeing players achieve, what they wanted out of the game. Yeah, it's a lot of moments. There's a great joy in coaching. It's a roller coaster ride, but if you've got the right attitude, there's great joy in coaching all the time. It's not just about the medals.
Harder than playing, isn't it? Emotionally.
Emotionally, yeah. You're in far greater control if you're playing, yeah. But the beauty of coaching is you get to coach players that are a hell of a lot better than you were. So they've probably got more control than you could have had anyway. And that was, I had good fortune to coach many, many great players at all levels during my coaching career, but my life took a different pathway, and I always thought I'd go back to it. I always thought I would end up going back to coaching, but I just never did, and got no regrets about it. But been many great moments.
Archie also wants to know what your least favourite coaching moment is.
My least favourite coaching moment? Oh, any loss. Any loss. Doesn't matter at what stage, any loss you take hard. Losses are always difficult. I couldn't isolate, the lowest, I think one of the lowest points at all was the untimely death of young Ben Alexander at Panthers. I think that was a very, very difficult time for all of us. You put that into perspective with wins and losses, it's very different.
How did you, I'm assuming you did, how did you take the emotion out of watching your teams play? You joke about Wayne Bennett and his heart rate never gets above 50 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like most people watching a game of football are off their heads.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, it's a learned trait, I can tell you, but you need to be almost emotionless during those periods. Otherwise, it will get to you, I think. I watch the coaches that are pretty placid on the sideline, and they're just viewing the game as a spectator and looking to
Craig Bell is the obvious exception to all of this, of course. But
I don't know how Craig does it. I don't know how he does it. You're churning on the inside, but I think your persona on the outside has got to be level for your players as well. I don't think it's not hard to it's not easy to contain your emotions all the time, particularly behind closed doors. But I think over a period of time you learn that the less emotional you are, the better your judgment's going to be, and the more help you can be to the players. It's a simple saying, it's never as bad as they say and it's never as good as they say. You've got to find that sort of level where you can be of assistance to them and help them through it, because they're going through their own emotional turmoil as well. The refereeing and officialdom can get to them and can be very distracting. And, but that's another thing you've got to navigate throughout your career and throughout the process of being a coach. But I think it's important to at least have a level of equilibrium about your emotions all the way through.
How'd you teach yourself to do that?
With great difficulty.
Meditation?
No, but you kind of get very circumspect. It's kind of like, what you learn is that you getting emotional about it or you worrying about something is not going to change it. It's beyond your control. What you need to control is what happens next. And the thing that I became probably most passionate about with coaching was teaching attitude control, how to control your thought processes and how to control your thinking and how to maintain a mental approach to the game that was actually going to be a benefit to you rather than worrying about all the things that you can't control. The first thing you can't control is what's happened. You can't control the past. You can't change it. And that may give you an emotional response, but you need to devoid yourself of that straight away and get on to what you should be thinking right now. So it was a simple question with us. What are you thinking? What should you be thinking? I know what you feel. I know what you're thinking, but what should you be thinking? And at any one time in a game of rugby league, and at any one time on the field, there's only 3 things you really need to think about. Who's got the ball? Where are we? What's my job? Doesn't matter how they got it. Doesn't matter where we are, but I've got a job to do right now on this play. So mental conditioning or mental toughness, as we did, was to remove yourself from everything else going around you, and understand that whatever's happened, we can't change that. It's happened. What's important now is our next thought. Read a book on Tiger Woods in his early career, and I read a lot of the great golfing books because golf was such a mental game, and it helped me with my coaching of rugby league, and I spoke to a lot of sports psychologists. Tiger Woods call it the bounce back factor. If I had a bad tournament, I wanted the next tournament to be good. If I had a bad day, I wanted the next day to be good. If I had a bad hole, I wanted the next hole to be good. If I hit a bad shot, I wanted the next shot to be good. Was sort of his mentality. But then he learned was, if I had a negative thought, my next thought had to be right. And we all get negative thoughts. We can't control that. You can't control your first response or your first thought to anything that happens to you. But to be able to bounce back from that and immediately think about what I should be thinking in a game of football. So if a teammate makes a mistake, if I make a mistake, if the referee makes a mistake, if the opposition has a bit of luck, if the weather starts to come down in buckets, if whatever's happening in the course of the game, we get a player sent to the sin bin, there is an immediate emotional response. We're 6 behind with 2 minutes to play and my teammate drops the ball with the line wide open. What's the first thing I'm going to say? Well, you know what I'm going to say. But is that going to help? No. What's my next response? It's whether we're 2 points in front with 5 minutes to go, or we're 6 points behind with 5 minutes to go. What's my next job? What do I need to do? And you get challenged with all these things right throughout the game, where you've got no control. There are certain things you've got control over and certain things you have absolutely no control over. And I think the best game managers in our game, I guess the best players in our game, is the ability to just switch to the next job. Next job. I forget about that next job. The fans might be screaming, the commentators might be screaming, but I've got a job to do on the next play. And the quicker I can get on with that and know exactly what I need to do, the more benefit I'm going to be to myself and the rest of the team. That's attitude control. That's attitude control. Not worrying about the scoreboard, not worrying about the clock, not worrying about the elements, not worrying about the luck or the bounce of the ball or the referee or anything else that's happening, because that will just create emotion and anxiety and rush of blood and probably lead to a poor response. So mental toughness and controlling your attitude is a part of being a professional sports person. It's almost mechanical. And when you see the really great individual sports people or you see the really great teams, one of the things they talked about them is they're like a machine, because a machine has no emotion. The machine's not going to respond to emotional events. And you've also got, you need to sometimes be in that state to overcome the negative thoughts or the negative things that you have. And players are very, very different. Some players have tremendous anxiety and tremendous lack of confidence, and it doesn't take much to upset them, and it doesn't take much for them to get off their game. And they're the ones that need a lot of help and to get back into the fight and realise that they've still got a job to do. So it's really is that sort of next job mentality. That's the one thing I can't control, is what's already happened. I can't control that now. I can go back and review it later and work out why it went wrong or how it went wrong or what I did wrong and then try to improve that. But right at the moment, the game's still going. I've got a job to do. And my job to do, what determines my job? Who's got the ball? We have or they have? Where are we? We're at this end or at that end? What's my job? Attack or defence? My job is this. I've just got to get onto that. I can't worry about the consequences or the perceived consequences. If you start worrying about the past and you start worrying about what might happen in the future, gee whiz, if we lose this, I might get dropped. Gee whiz, if we lose this, I might not have a contract. Gee whiz, like if you start worrying about the future and you start worrying about what's happened in the past, then you're not in the moment. You're not playing in the moment. You hear sports people talk about that all the time. So attitude control and mental toughness is really an important part of all coaching. And the greatest gift you can give a player, I think, as a coach, is the ability to think right, to think the right thing at the right time.
Do you bulk, Bill?
No.
I need your help.
For golf.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm picking up on something you said there, and we'll move on, but just thinking about one of the toughest things I reckon I've ever seen in terms of mental application or, that attitude control. When I call the swimming at the Paris Olympics and the 200-metre freestyle final, where Molly O'Callaghan and Ariane swam against each other. And Molly O'Callaghan, at her first Olympics, is renowned for her nerves before a race. I don't know whether you watched it, but as she stood on the blocks, she was visibly trembling with nerves, like shaking. And Eva Jard, who I called the race with in Thorpe, they're like, well, she's always nervous, but I don't think we've seen her like this before.
Yeah.
Like she was terrified.
Yeah.
And somehow composed herself and came out and won her first Olympic gold medal and beat Ariane.
But that might have been part of her coping mechanism, knowing that she's going to be nervous, knowing that she's going to react like that and she's going to feel that sort of tension. Maybe at different stages of her career she's tried to fight that and tried to hold it within, and maybe that's been she hasn't had a release for that. So maybe part of her mental toughness and control was to allow that to happen, but inwardly saying, I knew this was going to happen, I knew I was going to feel like this, but there's the lane, there's the end of the pool. I've done this a million times in training. I know I've got the goods. You know, just trust yourself, trust the process. Just let it go. Don't worry that you're nervous. Don't worry that you're shaking. Don't worry what people think about you. She may have been, earlier in her career as a young girl, worried about people seeing that she was nervous, people seeing that she was trembling. Maybe she tried to hide it, early on. It's, professional athletes, they react very differently to pressure and opportunity, and they have different anxiety levels. And some express it more than others. Some show it more than others. We see players, he wears his heart on his sleeve. Well, if you try to curtail that, sometimes it's going to be to their detriment too, because it'll be coming up more explosive somewhere else. They've got to get that immediate release to it straight away and get it out of their system before they go. But, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the girl, but, I would say that whilst she's outwardly expressing that, inwardly she's dealing with it. She's learnt professionally and through her training to know, I'm not going to fight this. I know how I feel, all right? And it'll be the same for a golfer that's got a winning putt, or he's got it. It's the same thing. I know I'm going to be nervous. Rory McIlroy recently won a playoff in a tournament. Wasn't the Masters? It was the one before. He had a 3-hole playoff the day at the end of a tournament, and the 16th was a sort of like a par 5, and he got a one-shot lead at the 16th, which was a par 5, and then the 17th was a small green surrounded by water, par 3. And he talked about how he went to that hole, and as he's walking to the hole, he could see himself hitting the ball in the water. He could actually see himself hitting the ball in the water. He could see himself making a mess of it, all right? He can't control that. That's his nature. That's his, But he said, I was able to deal with that because I knew I would feel like that, because I always feel like that. I always feel like I'm going to hit it in the water. I always worry about what the bad shot's going to be. But then I've got to get back to my process and control what I can control, which is my routine and my swing, and calm myself at that point of performance. Now, golf's such a hard game because it's not reactionary. You've got to hit a stationary ball, and you start where everything is stationary, and then you've got to get into emotion and hit a ball that's standing there. And then there's a long period of think time before your next shot. That's why it's such a mental game. Whether you hit a good shot or a bad shot, there's a long walk to your next shot.
Well, the greatest example of mental toughness I've ever seen is him in the Masters playoff. Well, at the end of the Masters. He tried to, he nearly butchered it 4 times and yet still won.
Yeah. There are many, many great examples of it. And sometimes the really great athletes that are very good at it don't understand what the mere mortals go through. And 99% of us are average. The really elites are on a different levels, and they probably don't deal with that sort of anxiety and lack of confidence or lack of belief. But they work hard to get where they are. They work hard to have that mentality. I think it's the greatest gift a coach can give an athlete, can give a player, is the ability to think right. The ability to think the right thing at the right time and to control their emotion, their anxiety. And the swimmer you talked about, she probably knew she had no control over the fact that she was going to be anxious and feel nervous and the way she did. And she wasn't afraid by this stage to visibly show it to the world, where earlier in her career she may have been. It may have been anxious for her to know that people knew that she was nervous, but she was then openly able to do that, but still look at the water and internally say, I've done this a million times before. I've done the training. This girl's not going to beat me. I'll just go through the process. And that's what we call about trusting the process. Go through the process. trust your process. That's what you've trained for. That's what you'll do.
Yep.
If you haven't done it in training, then you can't expect it to do it on game day. Not regularly anyway, or not consistently. So we try to create those scenarios in training. We try to create that environment in training where you're put to the test under fatigue. We train to fatigue, and then we try to execute skills and structures and game plans under fatigue, because that's where you're going to be asked to do it on game day. That's what makes the great players great. That's why it's hard to play this game. It's not easy. It's not easy. And they make it harder and harder and harder to play this game.
Six tackle trivia. That was great, Gus. Thanks. Who scored the first ever Magic Round try back in 2019? I had no idea Magic Round's been going for that long.
2019. That was before COVID.
It was a Sharks player. That's the hint.
We've been doing Magic Round since 2019.
I didn't realise that either.
So it's year 6.
Yeah.
Crikey. Sharks player in 2019. I wouldn't know he was playing for the Sharks in 2019.
He played for 4 clubs.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo-try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Yeah, I've got absolutely no. I'm trying to think about 2019, who would have been playing for the Sharks.
His brother was a reasonable player too.
I'm going to say Josh Morris.
Well done. Is it written down? Well done. You're unbeatable.
The brother gave it away.
Yeah, well, I thought so.
Yeah, the brother gave it away.
I'm just trying to keep your run going.
Yeah.
Can we think of something to challenge him next week, please? All right, let's preview Magic Round. And let's start with game 1 of the Women's Origin Series. Shall we? 7:45 tomorrow night from Suncorp Stadium. You can watch it all live and free on 9. Now, the betting odds on the tab this morning at 6:30 have Queensland, outsiders. At $1.95, the Blues
it's
at
Origin. It's
$1.85.
They're always outsiders.
Good point. But we've run the rule over both lineups earlier in the podcast. But I just have a look at that Queensland team, particularly given they're at Suncorp Stadium.
Yeah.
And the 1, 6, 7 and 9. Upton, Aitken, Brigginshaw, Brown. That is very formidable. That's Melbourne Storm-esque.
Yeah, well, we've got Keely Davis, we've got Jessie Southwell, we've got Tiana Penatani, and Abby Church. I don't think we're slouches either. I really like the look of this New South Wales team. You'll never hear me tipping Queensland over New South Wales, so
Fair enough.
I'm going with the Blues.
Go New South Wales.
And I'm going to be very biased when I'm calling the game, so get ready for it.
Yeah, Fatty did. You're more than entitled to. See if you can come up with a hee-yah or something like that. All right, our first Magic Round match in the NRL, round 9. Sharks Para kicks all the action off, and that is a 6 p.m. kickoff on Friday. Now, Sharks centre Kyle Iro, he was Kyle Iro, but he's changed his name to KL.
KL Iro.
To honour his father. He's back from a hammy, but they lost to Roddy to a knee last week, so they swap over, and Hamlin Nuele comes back into this Sharks team. And for Parramatta, Kelma Tuolangi is replaced by Charlie Geimer. Tuolangi is suspended, but we saw the difference Mitchell Moses had on the Parramatta team when he came back and inspired them to beat the West Tigers. Sharkies looked off the pace for most of that game on Sunday, yet they took it to Golden Point and easily could have won.
Yeah, it's not easy to play at Leichhardt under that environment. Full house. You can have good days and bad days there. I won't say they had a bad day, but they didn't have a good day either. It was a funny sort of game. There were periods where I thought, they were just starting to get on top, but they had a lot of try-scoring opportunities thwarted by last-ditch defence. They had opportunities to kick the field goal to win the game. They were able to survive the first period of extra time running into the wind. And I thought, they'll get it done now. And then, they just didn't get a chance. Unfortunately, the game was decided by a penalty at the back end, but it was a great afternoon's entertainment, except if you're a Sharks fan, the final result was no good for you.
Does it look a little bit like the Sharks just go through the motions sometimes?
No, I don't I wouldn't call it just going through the motions. I'm sure they're trying. They just quite haven't found the same level of execution that they've had in previous years. They're just not scoring the tries as readily as what they have been able to do in the past. And it could be that, teams have suddenly worked out how to deal with that sort of, slingshot attacking system that they use. They're very hard. They're very hard to beat. They're not easy to beat, but a few clubs have found a way to do it this year, and they need to put some wins together shortly, particularly before representative season comes around. I think that that would have been a tough game for them the other night. They're coming off a Golden Point, 88-minute effort against the Tigers at Leichhardt into a team that's coming off the bye and had a win before the bye, so their last 2 weeks would have been very, very productive. Mitchell Moses, we saw, made a big difference to this team coming forward. Having said that, and despite the short preparation, I think the Sharks have probably got more artillery. Oh, gee whiz. It's a hard one. It really is a hard one. I'm going to tip the Sharks because I just think they're a better side, but short preparation, disappointment of the Golden Point loss last week, coming up against a team that's coming off the bye, it gives Parramatta a chance to go back-to-back. I'm going to go Shark to win that one.
With not a lot of confidence by the looks of things.
With zero confidence.
Okay, Friday night footy. Roosters versus Dolphins. You'll see it all on 9. No change for the Roosters.
What was going on with the Dolphins last week?
That was utterly bizarre.
Utterly bizarre.
There was 30-0 in the second half.
Never seen anything like it. I mean, you look at their last couple of games where they were down 16-2 or something against Melbourne and then scored 40 unanswered points. And then came out against the Raiders in Canberra, who are one of the form sides of the competition, and virtually blew them off the park in the first half, led 28-10, and never looked like troubling the scorer for the rest of the game.
Bizarre.
And conceded, 30 points in the second half.
30-0.
30-0 in the second half. Incredible. They must pull their hair out.
So they get Felice Kafusi back, Daniel Safidi's out, so that's a straight swap. Jeremy Marshall-King will come back into the team. He hasn't played since round 6. He's had a bad leg gash, which must have been infected. So Raystone goes to the bench and Kurt Donaghy returns from an ankle injury on the bench. O'Sullivan and Bromwich drop out. So Marshall-King returning in the 9, which is the big inclusion for the Dolphins. Roosters either smash teams or get beaten easily.
Yeah, they're still finding themselves, aren't they? A lot of young fellas in their side and, you can see the potential here. I mean, all these young fellas they got in the team, wait till they get to 3 or 4 seasons under their belt. Wait till they've got 50 or 60 NRL games under their belt. They're going to be a great club into the future. No risk about that. And their performance against the Dragons on Anzac Day was great. I thought they'd win, but I didn't see 46 points in the pre-match sort of previews to that one. And they're on a little bit of a roll. I think, Dolphin, you've always got your heart in your mouth with the Dolphins because they've got points in them. They can really score points.
It is their home ground too.
Yeah. It's home ground for everyone this week. That's the way you've got to treat it. It's a great stadium, great place to play football in a great event. There's no home and away. You can't be thinking about it home and away. You should never think home and away anyway. I don't believe in home and away. Anyone, anywhere, anytime. Anyone, anywhere, anytime, Rooster.
Rooster to win.
Rooster to win.
All right. Now, the 3 o'clock game on Saturday, as part of Magic Round, will be on 9 because of our election coverage on Saturday night.
Yes.
That is South Sydney versus
Who puts the election
Newcastle.
on Magic Round?
What's he thinking? And he's a Souths fan, Albanese.
Who puts the election on Magic Round?
He has timed it so he can watch Souths in the afternoon and then deal with the consequences of the election during the evening.
Okay.
Of course, there is no Latrell Mitchell. So, more changes for Souths. It's been a revolving door at fullback and in the halves. Jai Gray goes back to fullback. Jack Whiten's going to play 5'8" and captain the team. Jaden Sullivan will be his halves partner. Ewan Aiken goes from the back row back to the centres. Tallis Duncan comes in to start with Lachlan Hubner coming back from concussion on the interchange bench. There was talk that Lewis Dodd and Jaden Sullivan were going to combine, but he's gone with Whiten instead. For Newcastle, man. So Jacob Safidi and Adam Elliott come back Safedi's in the front row. Elliott's on the bench. Tyson Brazil goes to lock. Croker goes to the bench. Tyrone Thompson and Thomas Cant drop out. They honestly look legless with the ball. How can they turn this around?
Yeah, when it turns around, it could come with a flood. I'm going to tip Newcastle. I just think that this will be their day.
Okay.
I do. I really like Dylan Lucas as a player. I think Safedi back into the side is important. Jack Cogger back at halfback, I think, helps enormously. Their defence, for the most part, is pretty good. And there's just too many changes to this South Sydney team sort of each and every week. And I think from the bench, to have Jaden Brayley, Matt Croker, Adam Elliott and Brodie Jones on your bench, I think there's more impact there and more stability than what's seen on the South Sydney bench. I think this is a game where if they can just get some confidence early and let their defence do it talking and control the ball, and then the points are going to come. You can't have Carlin Ponga in your team and not score points and not score tries. That will come. And I think it could come on the big pitch at Suncorp Stadium this weekend. 3 o'clock, day game. South Sydney been in some struggles. I'm going to tip Knight to beat Rabbit.
Okay. Maybe the week Newcastle find a little bit of form. How about this game?
Well, they scored 2 tries last week against the Warriors, and they had a couple disallowed. Very, very close calls. So there's 4. If they score 4 tries, they'll win this game.
Okay.
And that's, they don't need to score 100. They just need to score 3 or 4 tries and back their defence and their commitment. And they've had a run of outs and things are bad up there. So I think, Jack Cogger back to 7, Phoenix Crossland back to 9, Tyson Frizzell, Kai Pearce-Paul, Dylan Lucas, Leo Thompson's back from suspension, and Jacob Saifidi. I think this week's the week.
All right.
Knights fans, I think this week's the week you get a win.
Gee, the 5:30 game. What a clash, Gus. Warriors versus Cowboys.
Yeah.
Both teams flying. So the Warriors, unchanged.
Yeah.
Cowboys, unchanged.
Yep.
And both teams in excellent form.
Yep. Spoken to a couple of players recently. I said, who's the hardest team you've played against? Both said the Warriors.
Wow.
They just said they don't give you any room with their defence. They really pressure you and you feel like you're rushing everything and you feel like you're under pressure. And the Warriors' defence is going to have to be good because we got one of the best attacking teams here in the Cowboys. They just put 50 on the Titans last week. And
might I point out the Warriors have won their last 3 games without James Fisher-Harris.
Yeah. Defensively, they're just really solid at the moment. Notice Tamari Martin comes in on the bench at number 14. Now, he's been outstanding in New South Wales Cup recently. The Warriors New South Wales Cup team's been a very strong side. I like this young centre pairing of Rocco Berry and Leotawa. Metcalf in good form. Chance Nickel-Costa. Mitch Barnett will be headed for Origin this year.
I love it when you think out loud.
Yeah. I mean, Cowboys are so dangerous. Cowboys can just run in points from nowhere. Dearden and Clifford again. Scott Drinkwater so dangerous. I'm going to back the Warrior defence. I'm going to tip Warrior to beat Cowboy.
All right. Warriors to get the job done at Suncorp. 7:45 Saturday night, West Tigers versus the Dragons, baby. Same team for the Tigers. But Coach Shane Flanagan has swung the axe at St George Illawarra with Larkin King Tongia to wear the number 7 jumper after Lachlan Ilias was dropped. Sione Finau has also dropped out of the squad, replaced by Corey Allen, who comes back from a long recovery from an ACL. He's played cup football, but returns to the NRL stage. And up front, Hamish Stewart returns from concussion at lock. Jack de Bellin to the bench. Blake Laurie. Wow, Blake Laurie's in the reserves. So, some changes, particularly the halfback at the Dragons, and he's only a young kid.
Have you seen him?
Tongia. I think he played last year, didn't he? Might have had a game or two last year.
Might have had 1 or 2 last year. Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah?
He's a good player. Yeah. Dragons, Anzac Day, what happened there? They just, every now and then the scoreboard they either win big or they lose big, don't they?
Oh, on Anzac Day, they've been flogged the last 2 years.
Yeah, just ridiculous, the tries they conceded there. I mean, if they get off on the right leg and they can run their plays and they get plenty of football, they can run in some points. But then on the other side of the ball, if they don't get a lot of football for a period of time and they're starved of it, they just seem to leak points. I said at the start of the year, West Tigers will make the 8. That was my prediction. And what have they won now? 4 games?
Mm-hmm.
They're decidedly better than they've been in recent seasons. I think they've got a sniff of how good they can be. They're competitive. They've got points in them. They're controlling the game well. Galvin came back last week as though he hadn't been missing, and all the drama was swept aside. I'm going to tip Tiger to beat Dragon.
Okay. Tiger to march on. Titans versus Bulldogs, 1:50 p.m. This starts the list of games on the Sunday at Magic Round. And David Fafita, Gus, is on big coin. And guess what? He's playing in the Queensland Cup. It's been dropped. Jamin Jolliffe replaced by Isaac Fa'asua Mala'awi on a new look bench that features Clace Haas and Josiah Pa'ulu, who is a young front rower I know who's got enormous reputation. So for your Canterbury Bulldogs, there are suspensions. Matt Burton, Josh Curran, Satili Tupanua gone. Bally Hayward to play 5'8". So Luca Fafita comes in to play in the front row. Curtis Moran and Blake Tapp onto the bench. Dangerous game.
Very dangerous game, and particularly under strength like that. Like I said, they've got a number of middle forwards missing. Curran and Tupanua have been in outstanding form, and Matt Burton, of course, is so crucial to that team. They're going to have to play really well. The Titans are very, very dangerous. They've got a lot of points in them. Need to keep their wits about them this weekend, won't they?
Sunday football on 9, 4:05 p.m. I'm heading up to call that game. I'm up and back on Sunday. I miss all the fun of Magic Round this year, which I'm okay with. Luke Garner will play in the centres because Casey McLean's been dropped. Brian To'o still hasn't returned from the hammy. Luke Summerton has been named at hooker because Brad Schneider's out with that eye injury, so Trent Talau comes onto the bench to play his second game of the year. Now, Sorensen's suspended, so they need to make a change in the pack. I'd assume Isaiah Papali'i will go into the starting team and maybe Luron Patea onto the bench. Jordan Ricky's back for the Broncos and the only change to the team that beat the Bulldogs last weekend. Penrith 2 wins for the year, last on the ladder, and they really can't afford to lose too many more if they're to make the finals.
No, well, I think the finals are the last thing on their mind. I think they're just trying to recapture their form. Last week when they played against Manly, we tipped Manly, and I said that where Penrith were vulnerable, Manly were extremely strong, particularly with Tom Trbojevic back, and that was me assuming that the big winger was going to play too. He didn't play, but Jason Saab. But it proved that way. Manly were just a little bit classy out wide and came up with the points, and Panthers struggled for sort of combination, and they struggled a little bit in defence in those areas. It's very hard. I think that Nick Kenny missing from hooker is a loss for them as well. And now they've lost Sorensen. It's not going to make it easy for them. They're still searching for their style, and they're still searching for. It's you can't go out and buy experience. You can't go out and buy game time. And these outside backs are. I don't know that replacing McLean with Luke Garner solves the issue. Of their defence out and their lack of experience out on the edges to replace a young up-and-coming outside back with a back row forward. Now, they obviously know them better than I do, so you've got to trust the selection process there, but it's certainly where they're vulnerable at the moment. They're vulnerable out on the edges, and when you look at what they're up against, although Selwyn Cobbo always excels at fullback. I think he's played 4 games for fullback at Brisbane. He might have been man of the match 3 times, and they've won every time.
Reece Walsh might be in the Queensland Cup.
No, I don't think that'll happen. Yeah, interesting one. Look, if Penrith get their game right, it's the type of game that can really make Broncos struggle. But right at the moment, I think Broncos probably hold the upper hand in try-scoring potential. And there is still some vulnerability about the Panthers' defence, which has been the cornerstone of their game for the last 4 or 5 seasons. So I'll pick the Bronco, but cheering for the Panther to get back on track.
And the last game of Magic Round is potentially the best game of the weekend. I've got to say, the schedule is next level. If you're going to go to the football this weekend, you're going to be entertained. There's some incredible games of footy. And at 6:25 p.m. on Sunday night, the Melbourne Storm will take on the Canberra Raiders. Suafailongo is on the wing after being cleared of concussion. He might be one Perth targets. Can't get a run at fullback. Tui Kamikamica.
There are plenty of players to target that aren't going to cost you $2 million a year. Trust me.
He's an emerging star of the game, young Suafailongo.
Well, he creates points and opportunities. That's what he does. So I think there'll be a lot of teams that like to have him on their roster.
Tui Kamikamica's on the bench. They're hoping he'll come back from an ankle. And Big Nelson's in the extended squad after making a successful return from concussion in the Queensland Cup last week. So I'd imagine if he's played last week, he'll probably come in. And the Raiders are unchanged.
Yep. Good side, the Raiders. We've been saying it all year. Fit and fast, and they play for the 80 minutes, and that overwhelmed the Dolphins last week. They're
missing Harry Grant, aren't they?
They are. They are missing Harry Grant. Good team, the Raiders. Melbourne got an exceptional record up there in Queensland at Suncorp. I'm looking. I think Ricky's Raiders might cause the upset this week.
Win 7 of the year for Ricky's Raiders.
Yep.
So let's run through these with the tab odds.
Yep.
6 p.m. Friday, Sharks $1.48, Eels $2.60.
Well, I don't think there's much difference between them. I'm going to tip the Shark, but I don't think they're $1.46 chance.
Friday, $7.50. It's a flip of the coin, Rooster Dolphin.
Yeah,
$1.90.
I'm flipping the coin Rooster way.
$1.90 each of two. 3 p.m. Saturday, Rabbitohs $1.70 favourites against the Knights at $2.10.
Been a long time since South Sydney were favourites. I'm going to tip Knight to bounce back.
There's a bit of value for Gus this weekend because the Warriors are $2 and the Cowboys are $1.80.
Yeah, not much between them either. I think the Warriors' defence might be the defining thing there. If they can keep the Cowboys to 2 or 3 tries, I think the Warriors have got the points in them to win that.
Tigers $1.80, Dragons $2.
I think that's about fair. I'm tipping Tiger.
All right, Bulldogs $1.24, Titans $4. Panthers are $2.30, the Broncos are $1.60, so there's not a lot between them in the betting, despite their opposite ends of the table.
Yeah. Everyone knows the Panthers have still got it in them, and I still think the Panthers are going to win plenty of games this year. They're going to have to navigate Origin. They're not going to go into Origin in great shape, on the premiership table, and they've got to navigate Origin and the number of players that are going to be used there. Still haven't got Brian To'o back. Still haven't got Nick Kenny back. They're still a little bit under strength. They're still a little bit invulnerable out wide. Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds, they just fire up these blokes and they throw plenty of bullets at you. The Reynolds kicking game is outstanding. Broncos would have to get it terribly wrong to lose this one, I think.
Okay. And then the Storm are $1.52, the Raiders are $2.50. So you've tipped a few outsiders this weekend.
I think that's tremendous value, the Raiders. I think that's really big value, the Raiders. I don't think Melbourne's $1.52 chance in this game. They could win. They could win. Of course they could win. They're a very good side. But I don't know. I just fancy Ricky's Raiders this week. I think they've got the points in them not to be intimidated by the Storm machine.
Thanks for my psychology lesson. Most invaluable.
For your golf.
Yeah.
You'll get on the first tee and you'll be trembling and...
It's not the first tee that's the problem. So as the round goes on and on. Even if I'm playing well, I start to get the jitters. I'm like, oh, this is going to go to shit any stage now.
You get out of your comfort zone. So
Have a great trip.
You've got to be emotionless. Think of Wayne Bennett. Just think about,
He'd fall asleep in the golf cart.
Yeah, he looks like he's sitting in his lounge room watching a movie.
Have a good trip to Brizzy.
We'll do.
That's 6 Tackles with Gus. Thanks to Tab. We're back with more next week.